Ever since the PlayStation 4 was first unveiled to the masses, motherfuckers went into mass geek-like hysteria over the announcement of it, and then eventually it made its way on the store shelves, and motherfuckers were picking that beast up and taking it home, playing the living fuck out of some games. Everybody's been wondering for a long-ass time now, what about backwards compatibility? Ever since the PlayStation 2, that's kind of been a staple of the Sony home consoles, is that we'd have the ability to play past generations of PlayStation games on our consoles. On PlayStation 2, you could play all the PS1 games. That shit was great. Then on the PlayStation 3, especially with the very first one, the 60GB model, you could play PlayStation 1, 2, and 3. Plus I had Linux on it, so that was even more amazing. But then PlayStation 4 lacked the ability to play PlayStation 1, 2, or 3. Now, I'll give it a slide for PS3 because emulating that is going to be an arduous task, something that's going to take fucking absolute decades for them to go and figure out, just because the architecture of the PS3 is like the Saturn. That shit's just built in a very different way that's hard to emulate. But PlayStation 1 and 2, that shouldn't be all that trying of a task for a system such as that. I mean, if the PlayStation 3 can do it natively, then why the fuck can't it do it with this? I mean, it's already been proven that they can go and do this with a recent little bundle of Star Wars games that they had PlayStation 2 Star Wars games running on there. One of the things also to note that was kind of neat was Super Star Wars was included in this bundle. That was a Super Nintendo / Super Famicom exclusive. So you never know what other Super Nintendo games or Sega Genesis games or even just games from the past on different consoles from completely different companies could make their way on the current crop of consoles that are out right now. I would love this idea. The entire Super Star Wars trilogy, that'd be fucking amazing. But just the bevy of other titles, god damn, it'd just be too fucking good. But back to the point. PlayStation 4 should have backwards compatibility. That's just a fact. And anybody can say, who cares about those old games? Motherfucker, I do. And millions of other people around the world care about all sorts of games. Blast from the past, from the 90s and 2000s, everything and anything that has to do with the PlayStation brand. I mean, I've got close to about 400 PS2 games sitting right the fuck over there, and about 300 PS1 games sitting right over there. And sure, I have the original hardware. I've got a PlayStation 2 sitting right there. I've got an original PlayStation 3 sitting there. Hell, I've got a secondary PlayStation 3 there so I can play Japanese PlayStation 1 games, and plus it's an awesome limited edition. But that right there, that's got all ground covered. But for many people out there, they don't have the original hardware. You know, if you tried running any PlayStation 2 games, and be like, man, this is gonna look real nice, you'll realize that the resolution for them looks like absolute fucking ass. Like fucking dingleberry stuck to your fucking brown eye shit. This is something you want to fucking deal with. But apparently, this will allow for upscaling of virtually every single title out there. Now, are they going to do something, and they've confirmed this already, let's get that out of the way. They've already confirmed that they are working on this, and with the Star Wars little package, little bundle deal, yeah, it's safe to say that they've got this shit up and running, and it works very well. PlayStation 2 emulation is something that the whole entire emulation community has been working on for years upon years now. And while it's really good, it's far from perfect. There's plenty of compatibility issues, and my god, just sometimes the glitches and the graphical hiccups and all sorts of fuck-ups that occur in them, even if you have a top-of-the-line gaming PC and then try to go and run these, it's only so much that can be done because, well, the sad truth of the matter is that some of them look like shit. Now, I don't want to have to go and depend on the PlayStation Network or even fucking like PlayStation Now, which is a fucking joke in itself. I don't want to have to depend on these things to be able to play these types of old games. And for many people out there that don't own the physical copies of these games, you know, you shouldn't have to depend on something like that. In just that, you figure with the whole entire digital catalog of games that's made available right now, think of the monstrous amount of titles that are not available on there and never will be because those companies aren't around anymore, or they just don't have the licensing rights to that anymore. That's the truth. Look at the Onimusha series, for example, something that I've wanted desperately, so desperately, to see make its way into a little HD bundle and put out for everybody again, and then see the series make a resurgence back into the prime because, well, it was one of the best ones from that generation. Well, that can't happen because of all the real-world actors and actresses that they use to create that game. So unless you want to pay out a fucking load of money for all the different titles that be included with it, it's just not going to happen. They'd have to go and redo the game from the ground up entirely. All the cutscenes and all the character models, and then the voice acting it wouldn't be worth it. But if you have the original games, it'd be nice to be able to play them back on your PlayStation 4. Upscaled, no less. If you look at the amount of titles right now that are in 480p, 480i, 720p, 720i, 1080p, and 1080i, it's ridiculous. It's like this title is able to play at this resolution, this title with this resolution. There's only a handful, I'm talking a very handful of games, like less than 10, that play in true high definition. A very short list. But then the amount of titles that don't even play in 480p, that play in interlace in 480i, they look like ass. If you put it on a high definition television, they just look like crap. It doesn't matter if you have SCART cables, doesn't matter if you have component cables, doesn't matter whatsoever. It still looks pretty fucking crummy. You know, emulation is about the only way that you can get a lot of these games truly upscaled to look really nice on modern day sets, but you don't want to have to always depend on something like that that's shoddy at best. And despite the fact I respect the living shit out of everybody in the emulation scene trying to go and keep these games relevant, and so that they don't just eventually fade away into obscurity, unless it's 100% perfect across the board, then it's hard to really embrace it and be like, man, I'm going to celebrate this and play living shit out of it. You know, I've got the legit games. I'd like to play them on legit hardware. Like I said, I've got the original hardware, but it doesn't look all that great when I play it. And sure, this to some people like, oh man, you're just a graphics whore and all this shit. No. The actual visuals get bogged down and look really ugly because of modern day sets. The only way that you can make them look half nice is if you have a tube television. That's really it. But this would allow you to be able to play it on your high definition television. I mean, I've got a fucking 4K Samsung right here. If I go and play, like, plenty of my PlayStation 2 games on there, they look pretty fucking crappy. Really fuzzy, really washed out. Not nearly as bad as something, say, the Nintendo 64, for example, which has not aged all that gracefully, but they still don't look all that good, and considering that some of these games are graphical powerhouses, but it doesn't shine through, it kind of sucks. That's all that there is to it. It kind of sucks ass. So, Sony confirming this, that they're working on it, it does make me really happy, but they haven't just come straight out and said, okay, it's going to launch on this date, and it's all games across the board. Now, are they going to do kind of similar to what Microsoft is doing right now, where they just have, you know, little batches? This entire list of games will be compatible, this entire list of games will be compatible. I think it'd be asinine if they did some shit like that, but I'm just wondering, how will they go about it? Will this work across the board? Is that the reason why they've been waiting so long on it? I mean, I've speculated for a while. I know that they can go and do this. Were they waiting to see whether or not, you know, people had big-time increased demand for such a novel feature, which should have been there from the get-go? Or were they trying to see, well, let's see if our streaming service will take off? And it hasn't exactly boomed with success the way that they would think, because the pricing for it makes no fucking sense. And the idea of streaming games that I already own is asinine at best. It just doesn't make any sense. I think that they need to go make an announcement of, hey, on this date we will be rolling out an update for the systems, and it'll be backwards compatible across the board. I would like them to also just make all the PS1 games backwards compatible, just for shits and giggles. It would make more sense to go and do that. Just PlayStation 1, PlayStation 2, get it the fuck out of the way, make people happy. For anybody out there that's one of those people who's like, I didn't buy a new console to play old games, then don't fucking play them. I don't know what else to fucking tell somebody that says asinine, stupid shit like that. You're like several steps back, like, oh man, are they giving us more options? Well, I fucking hate that. Something that's optional that you have a problem with makes you a fucking idiot. Demanding less when somebody's trying to give you more, something that you're not interested in, doesn't mean shit to all the people that are interested in it. Let's get that out of the fucking way. You are not the be-all, end-all. If there is mass demand and the multi-millions for a system that is fucking selling like hotcakes to have a feature bestowed upon it that it should have had to begin with, just because you don't fucking like it doesn't mean it shouldn't be there. And if it doesn't get in the way of you enjoying all of your current gen games, then why the fuck do you care? Shut the fuck up. jackass. Yeah, jackass. Sorry, Happy Gilmore just popped into my head. So, this should happen. When is it going to roll out? Nobody has any idea whatsoever. This is just them confirming, yes, we are working on it, and here's a couple of games to confirm that it is working, it is up and running, and it looks quite nice. But I know that they said that they have it so that you can make virtual memory cards similar to how you do on the PlayStation 3, that the little trackpad on the PlayStation 4 controller that acts as like starter select or whatever the fuck that they plan on doing with it, just because the share button is right there. Sooner or later somebody's going to make a third-party controller that includes a select button. I guarantee that'll end up happening. But I just feel that this is a good sign. You figure Microsoft got a shitload of praise whenever they came forward and said, hey, we're making this happen. Sony's not. They're kind of fucking idiots for not doing that, but we are. Sony needed to go and get with the times and realize there is a lot of appeal and demand for stuff like this. I mean, getting PlayStation 2 games is fucking cheap. There's plenty of games out there, and I'm not talking about some titles, you know, such as Haunting Ground, for example, or some of the dot hack games, which just keep going up in price, which is fucking ridiculous, makes me sad, which some of that shit was reprinted, or just bundled together into a little HD collection or whatever the fuck. But getting them is cheap. Very, very cheap. And that's one of the things I've always told people. You want to start getting and collecting? PlayStation 2 and Xbox. GameCube is like skyrocketing in price. Oh my fucking god. But that entire generation, for the most part, it doesn't cost much. You can get games for only a couple bucks a pop. That's fucking splendid for anybody that's just wanting to go and build up a library from the get-go. But for anybody that's already got a pre-established library of games, such as myself, or wants immediate access to games that just won't ever be made again digitally, just because, you know, those companies aren't around or whatever, this is the only way to go about that. So you should make it backwards compatible so people can continue to enjoy things from generations past. Just makes sense. I mean, the fucking system was only around for over a decade for a reason, and it was because it was fucking badass. So do this, roll this out. I hope that they at least release it within 2016. I don't see it happening this year because, well, next month is fucking December. Also, Star Wars. Yeah, that's gonna be amazing. Yeah, I'm talking about Star Wars, so gotta go and mention the movie. But I hope this happens really soon, and I hope it turns out to be fucking amazing with all the entire games, which it's a big-ass catalog of games considering it's over 1,000 PlayStation 2 games. Over 1,000. Think about that. That's just pure fucking insanity. Anyway, this is Alpha Omega Sin. As always, nerds, nerdettes, and gamers game the fuck on.